Hello everyone, welcome! Velkommen alle sammen. So, my name is Silja Leisdottir. For those who don't know, I'm the exhibition curator here at Bergen Kunsthall. And I'm really happy to welcome you to today's platform talk with Neo Musangi. So first, I wanted to say that this event is part of a pre-program for the upcoming conference Circuits of Experience, Research and Knowledges. It's a 4-day gathering that explores the question, how do we come together when the structures for gathering are disappearing, which officially starts tomorrow. Today's talk takes place in the context of Tori Wrånes' exhibition Moonbag and Rindon Johnson's Fine Spot. Tori Wrånes' exhibition is an immersive installation. I hope most of you have had a little bit of time to see it, and that transforms Bergen Kunsthall into an unpredictable landscape. The exhibition's exploration of power structures and relational entanglements and speculative gestures offers a resonant backdrop for the reflecting of many of the themes that are also present in Neo's practice. So I promise not a too long bio, but a little bit. Neo Musangi lives in Kenya and works across the field of art and academia with a particular focus on queer feminist discourse. Their writing explores uncertainty, memory, failure, and the imagination of freedom, among other things, connecting personal experience with broader social concerns. They also engage in performative practices, often in public space, and among other things to mention, Neo is also a founding member of the Black Planetary Futures Collective, which envisions alternative futures through research and art rooted in Black perspectives. I will also mention that Neo Musangi will take part in the main conference program with the contribution Word of the Day, offering reflections on the term experiences, research, and knowledges. And this platform talk will last for approximately 30 minutes, after which we're very happy to open for questions and conversations. But please note that the event is being streamed, as you can see, so we kindly ask that you use this microphone that my colleague Marte will walk around with. When asking questions, don't be scared. The toilets are to my left, and I also want to just say thank you to my colleagues Henrik and Marte for making this event happen, and to Anne Szefer Karlsen for the collaboration with this conference that is happening. And I think that's it for me. And then I just want to give the word to you, Neo. Yeah.
Ooh. Hello. I'll start by saying this has suddenly become very serious. I like to play, but also to give you a warning that I might not last our 30 minutes. But I'll see. I'll see how this goes. So yeah, my name is Neo Sinoxolo Musangi. I'm sorry I have an accent, like all speakers who are not first language speakers of English. So I hope that you understand what I'm saying. I might not speak about this exhibition as much as I would want to because I only arrived at the exhibition today. So I'm feeling many things, as I was saying to Celia. And those things are not yet ready to be spoken in public. So they might come in a different form. But what I'm going to speak about today might somehow tie in with both Tori and Rindon's exhibition. Somehow, you might find them somewhere in this. So today I will speak about something I'm calling a grammar of fugitivity in 3 notes. And so I arrived here not by my own doing, but by the doing of many, all of whom I thank, and some of whom I will mention, Celia and Meyer, for the invitation and the logistics with which that comes. Thank you. Shukran. Thank you. I arrive here today as the country I was born into and in which I live goes into chaos again. Today, June 25th, 2025, marks a year since the day the largest number of unarmed civilians were shot and killed, and in a new Kenyan vernacular, abducted, kidnapped, and disappeared by the Kenyan state outside of an election period. We get killed every election cycle. More than 70, mostly young people, are presumed dead or disappeared in the last year, and many more unaccounted for. Earlier this month, Albert Ojwang, a 31-year-old teacher, was picked up from his home in Homa Bay, more than 7 hours drive out of Nairobi, by the police. Many of us did not know Albert before he was killed in police custody in Nairobi the night they brought him in from his parents' home. His crime: writing something said to be insulting about a senior police officer, Mr. Eliud Lagat. The Kenyan state first claimed that Albert Ojwang died after hitting his head constantly on the cell wall. Even if that were true, that too would still be a police killing. Last week, Kenyans took to the streets to make demands to end police killings in Kenya. Another young man, Boniface Kariuki, was shot in the head at the protest. My friend Brian Inganga took procedural pictures of this shooting. He did not know that the bullet would get into the young man's head. It is not clear if Boniface is still alive. What we were told is that a bullet lodged in his head was removed, and he is still at the Kenyatta National Hospital's intensive care unit, unresponsive. We do not know what we are not told. We do not say what we do not know. And what we know has to come from elsewhere, the elsewhere of our death and dying. I arrive here today as tear gas and bullets fill the air in Nairobi and other cities in Kenya, as a criminal state continues to kill and torment its own citizens. I arrive here today with the knowledge that the current regime will kill me for anything, and that includes being queer or femme or masculine or trans or from the wrong ethnicity or for saying salam alaikum, and a myriad of reasons for which the state might see as a disturbance of the peace. I hate that word, peace, because we know peace really has never meant the absence of war. Peace, law, and order become a vernacular of oppressive regimes across histories and geographies. I arrive here, therefore, haunted, angry, and desperate. But then my pain becomes really minute, put side by side with other contexts. The ongoing genocidal project run by the Israeli Zionist regime and the US war machinery against Palestinians, against Syrians, against Iranians, against Lebanese, and everyone to whom the human is not a given. The number of people who might get shot and or die today in the Kenyan protests do not compare to the numbers of Congolese people who have died since the Belgians, the French, the Americans, and other later arrivals stepped foot in the two Congos and elsewhere. Things are not as bad in Kenya is repeated constantly. In the streets today, I meet Jay. There are 4 of us in Bergen, he tells me. I do not know if Jay's us means black or African or queer or whatever that difference might be. I walk away from Jay wishing that the four remain, somewhat grateful that I do not have to stay here yet, and hoping that there will not be more running here. But then, Somali poet Warsan Shire, no one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you. Fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burnt threats into your neck. And even then, you carried the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilet, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you wouldn't be going back. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains, beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck, feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than journey. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, pitted. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison, because prison is safer than a city of fire. And one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one's skin would be tough enough. The go-home blacks, refugees, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, sucking our country dry, niggers with their hands out. They smell strange, savage, messed up. They messed up their country, and now they want to mess ours up. How do the words, the dirty looks roll off your backs? Maybe because the blow is softer than a limb torn off. Or the words are more tender than 14 men between your legs. Or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child body in pieces. I want to go home. But home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of a gun, and no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home told you to quicken your legs, leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the oceans, drown, save, be hunger, beg. Forget pride. Your survival is more important. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave. Run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know anywhere is safer than here. So my despair and solidarity with the people protesting against the Kenyan state will not account for the number of Africans that continue to die in the Mediterranean to get to a Europe that hates them and blames them for their own deaths. Like Ojwang hitting his head on the cell walls, migrants, not to be confused with expatriates and travelers. Migrants are willfully dying at sea. This is not to say that even one life lost is not worth speaking of. This is a question of scale. So I arrive into the Bergen Kunsthall thinking of many things. One, scale and proportion. 2, war and its aftermath. 3, water and borders. And 4, animals and the non-human. Scale and proportion we learn from art and design. Scale we also learn from fish and music and from experiencing the world. War and its aftermath we know from our shared histories, coercive or not. Water and borders we learn from movement, from land, and from the rhythm of our bodies in space and place, whatever that place might be. Tori's moonbag and Rindon's fine spot, both of which I experience in the body as discomfort, as rhythm, as humor, as pain, as fear, as joy, as calm, as and as. This led me back to all 4 things with which I arrived here. I am captured by Tori's scale and proportion, sound and flowscape, aesthetic form and critical laughter, sculpture as architecture, and water and rhythm. I will have to sit in and sit with this exhibition for a little longer. But allow me to tell you stories about flight and refuge and perhaps something about language. So a quick Google search will tell you something about notes. A note in music refers to a notation representing the pitch and duration of a musical sound. Notes are distinct and isolatable sounds that act as the most basic building blocks for nearly all music. It is this discretization through musical notation that facilitates performance, comprehension, and analysis. While music speaks of 7 key notes, here I present 3 incomplete thoughts as notes, as provocations, as perhaps distinct and isolatable statements of fear and care. Can I drink from the jug like the Haitian president? I have been revisiting old debates and new questions about body politics and the body politic, as it were, especially with regard to human rights universalisms and Africa's return to the metaphorical table. A return that in some ways has its traces in the imperial archive as something at once, like its people, loathsome and pitiful. Amongst many ways that Africa's double jeopardy has become even more evident, at least to me, and perhaps because it feels even more personal, is through what has come to be known as LGBTIAQ+ rights. In this expanding but rather static discourse, Africa appears as true to character, primitive, human animal, and murderous. Indeed, international and local NGO reports show in great detail the murderous nature of what has been called political homophobia and transphobia. Between 2023 and 2024, more than 3 Black African countries, including Ghana, Kenya, and the perennial culprit, Museveni's Uganda, have tabled and/or passed legislation that further criminalizes same-sex desire and gender identity. This act alone, coupled with the inciting to violence by many African political and religious, almost always the same people, Coupled with this is indeed a truly life-taking and indefensible position. However, I want to focus on this very language, a language that, even as I use it, feels borrowed, repeated, and rehearsed, and therefore always performed. Here I want to think through LGBTIAQ+ and its attendant capture of Black and African geographies. I present here what I call a grammar of fugitivity realized in the present as flight and or escape. I offer you an alternative introduction. Introduction 2. On April 7th, 2024, at one of Nairobi's most popular musical events, Blankets and Wine, my friends and I waved the LGBTI flag during Eric Wainaina's performance of Daima Kenya, a song that was originally written as Kenya Only. A patriotic song of both hope and disillusionment, first released in 2001 at the end of President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi's 24-year regime, and a song that was popularized as a mourning song after the 2008 US Embassy bombing in Nairobi. This was not the first time in less than a year that I had found myself carrying this flag. A flag that I neither owned nor brought to the stadium. I pride myself, a bit punily and also problematically, as a flag-averse Kenya-hating queer. So this second instance has continued to trouble me in ways I'm not able to articulate coherently yet. I know, however, that this aversion to the gay or LGBT or rainbow flag has its beginning in a discomfort with the NGOization of dissent and the colonial logics demonstrated by homophobia and those that politically and legally oppose this homophobia and resist that hatred and violence. Allow me to linger here for a while. A day after the concert and the flag-waving country claiming intention to offend, I find myself sitting in an apartment with a few of the lesbian friends I had carried the flag with, and 3 of our visiting friends from Botswana. A somewhat drunken conversation ensues about coming out. We revisit the joy of offending homophobic Kenyans at a mainstream event, where Eric, publicly an ally, gave a special shout-out to queer Kenyans and their pursuit of freedom. I would not stand. Catch me dead waving the flag for F, one friend says. So I refocus and ask why. Because my friend explains, she's lesbian, but will never come out, but will use queer Kenyans for her musical aspirations. She will never claim me, she will never claim us, and so I've no business claiming her, my friend says emphatically. I disagree with this need for people to come out as lesbian, as gay, as LGBTI, as anything. Everyone seems to have more energy for this than I do, so I give up and say, no, I refuse it. No one owes queers in Kenya their life. No one owes anyone anything. I do not remember the rest of this conversation, but this exercise in narration is important to me in 2 ways. 1, it situates LGBTIAQ+ politics within the usual contestations of citizenship and the nation state. Secondly, it exposes the fault lines between private and public life and the demands for queer participation. So I return here to fugitivity and notes. And these may be obvious articulations, but one, LGBTIQ+ and its variations is a disarticulation. While imagined communities serve a purpose, including as a political tool, the assertion that people with a supposedly shared sexual orientation and gender identity form a relatively uniform community is depoliticizing. It not only risks obscuring other intersecting factors that lead to stratification even within the LGBTI community, but it also refuses to name the thing that needs to be named. What does it mean to say lesbian, or gay, or bisexual, or transgender, or intersex? What does this naming do that the language of the acronym does or might not do? In the circulation of LGBTI+, what remains an ellipsis? What is not said? So in the curious case of Kenya, where progressive legislation regarding intersex persons and criminalizing laws against lesbian, gay, and bisexual persons, and somewhat recognizing laws for transgender persons exist alongside each other. What then is the LGBTIQ community? If LGBTI+ is a political tool, then for whom does this tool advocate and how? What does it mean for intersex Kenyans to ask for the I in LGBTIQ+ to be dropped in advocacy efforts by LGBT organizers? What is to be said of the distinctions being sought here? Is this a request about gender or sexuality? Or a request about gender and sexuality? Or gender as sexuality? Or even gender without sexuality? Indeed, is the intersex community perhaps asking for an understanding of sex and gender as different from our conversation on gender and sexuality? Of course, shorthand is necessary, and LGBT does help in discussing access to the international human rights frameworks that exist. To be granted asylum, for example, we know that a queer or transgender person must prove the basis for their claim is an experience of violence or the threat of it, or discrimination because of their LGBT identity, which for the case of most of Africa continues to create new categories of fugitives, avoiding prosecution at home only to land at the fictive kinship of white universalism in Europe and North America. Note number 2. LGBTI+ is, quote unquote, an African. Throughout the history of law and medicine, the figure of the homosexual emerges as an anomaly and a subject for both sexology and psychiatry. The appropriation of the sodomites in Abrahamic religions and Victorian law situates the homosexual within a history of Western civilization and empire, as well as the continued struggle for medicine to now distance itself from eugenics and scientific racism. I want to think with the possibilities of the homosexual in these old colonializing or colonial archives as a way to arrive at anatomy and pathology by way of blackness. Put alongside the many other ways through which bodies have been probed and dissected, and think here of C. Riley Norton's focus on Sims' gynecological experiments, for example. Perhaps the homosexual body might politically yield more than a body amorphously known as LGBT. Indeed, the term LGBT community we know has activist origins, signaling political solidarity in many cases. But it has also become a convenient acronym in a neoliberal economy where the LGBT community has come to be seen, and in some cases even self-see, as an indispensable niche market, whether it's for selling rainbow flags or even selling a political candidate. This acronym, for me, creates a forced dichotomy between an in and out group, and as the coming out debate with my friends and the case of intersex Kenyans shows, this can have the unintended effect of alienating some people who do not foreground their sexual or gender identity. It may make them feel that by rejecting the category, they are betraying, quote unquote, their people, and by default, their supposedly essential identity. They become fugitives, they are runaways, they are criminals awaiting recapture and repatriation. A disproportionate focus on identity as a fixed category we know downplays structural barriers and political contexts. While identities are constructed, they're important to individuals and have tangible consequences, or what Fanon calls lived experience. And from Frantz Fanon and Sylvia Wynter, I learn and think with sociogeny and the sociogenic principle here. I learned to approach with caution the overemphasis on the African as the consequential queer, simple and obvious. I learned to speak with trepidation about the usefulness of the identity categories within which or with which we research and theorize lives, ours and others, even when those categories claim a distancing from colonial ethnographies and neoliberal identity markets. Note number 3. I hope you're nicely confused. LGBTI plus is Africa's homophobic or transphobic vernacular. LGBTI plus enters quite late into contemporary manifestations of politics, law, and the public sphere. As such, it is easily adapted into the language of attack and legislation in an increasingly diminishing civil society space and anti-gender culture wars. In Kenya and Uganda, for example, legislation and public debate has quite suddenly replaced gay. We stopped being the gays. Now we are replaced with LGBTQ, often pronounced as a single word, LGBTQ. While it is possible to speculate the reasons for this turn as connected to the dispersal of US Christian right evangelicals and funding, it is curious to witness the ease with which LGBTQ refuses the taboo sensibilities of homosexual and gay. It's very easy for homophobes and transphobes in really homophobic and transphobic context to use LGBTQ, but no one wants to say gay or homosexual anymore. So like Erin Durbin demonstrates in her fieldwork in Haiti, Masisi, otherwise a derogatory term, a Creole term, is preferred to LGBT. And this is because LGBT is seen as foreign, mostly American, and therefore queer people in Haiti see this as unrelatable and consequently untranslatable. Toward a conclusion. So as someone who works on a thing known as gender and sexualities broadly, I'm thinking today more expansively of the thing we call often culture, whether that culture refers to political claim-making, or love potions, or woman-to-woman marriages, or Pentecostal movements, or the US Christian right, or legislation, or feminism, or gender, or LGBTI movement building, or even masculinities, intimate partner violence, or because the fugitivity I speak of here, too, is culture. A culture of movement, a language culture, a culture of refusal, a culture of resistance, and a culture of flight. And before you get a lot more confused about what's going on, I will stop here. And perhaps the thing I'm driving at is a return to disrespectability, a return to a grammar of fugitivity that approaches language suspiciously and constantly looks behind one's back to evade recapture, to evade enslavement and the plantation that can be identity politics. Thank you.
I'll move up here for the sake of streaming. Hi, thank you so much, Neo. I'm a little bit speechless, but I'm really grateful for your perspectives and the knowledge that you shared with us. I did say in the beginning that there would be a little bit of space for either comments, thoughts, questions, finished, unfinished. And so this mic will be handed out if you have anything to say out loud. Yeah. Shy Norwegian people. Oh, yeah. There you go. Not shy, not Norwegian.
Non-shy, non-Norwegian. I don't know if you can hear me with this. So I'm a psychologist, and one of the interesting things talking about identity politics in labeling is that when we talk about mental health, for instance, some people prefer not to be labeled, and some people find comfort in labels, self-labeling. And I wonder if you had any thoughts about people's desire to either self-label in a particular category, LGBTQI+, A+, or not.
Well, I mean, this is very, very raw and unthought through, but I also need to acknowledge as a political position that it's important for people to make a claim to a community. So, and I think what I'm trying to think with is the moving in and out of identity politics, right? Because I think politically it is really useful, and perhaps even psychologically, for people's own comfort to find a quote-unquote home with others. Yeah, I'm wary of psychologists because I don't know what you're thinking as I speak. I'm suspicious. I mean, this is not to negate the need for some kind of identity claim making. It's not, but I also want to think a lot deeply about what this does then for the real work, the real change that really needs to happen. And speaking from places that this is not a way to be for many, or this is a way to be quietly. So when I talk about coming out and the fact that no one should be pressured to, it's also because I know coming out is a threat to one's life, and wondering about what care then we can take of each other, even within those communities. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Maybe this is not a question, but it was more maybe an answer and a comment, an answer to the first question, I guess, about whether or not this talk and the perspectives was somewhere fitting with Rindon and Tori's exhibition, and I definitely personally think it is. And I guess you did mention, now you talk about the grammar of fugitivity and this moving in and out of identities, and you also mentioned that you felt discomfort, rhythm, pain, joy, and calm. And these are emotions that coexisted together or almost at the same time, or if it was a moving in and out, but all of these quite contradictory feelings happening at the same time. So I guess it was more of a thinking of that space in connection with what you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we clap? Yeah.
Okay, then I'll end by saying thank you also for the sake of the online audience, so they don't just linger and stay. So I'll just wave goodbye. And then for everyone here, I assume some of you will be at the conference, so we get to talk more with Neo. And also now the exhibition is closed. And so I just wanted to mention the practical thing is that you actually are sort of locked in. We'll lock you out. But, yeah, so everything is closed downstairs. So if you go out, you will not be able to come back in again, if that makes sense. And thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much, Neo.